The new evangelization calls Catholics to be evangelized and then to go forth to proclaim the gospel. This call most certainly applies to all Catholics, but how it applies to Hispanic Catholics, who make up almost half the Catholic population in the United States, deserves our particular attention. Join us today as we explore the gifts Hispanic Catholics bring to the new evangelization and the challenges they face with the Most Reverend José Gomez, Archbishop of Los Angeles. I'm Michael Hernon, Vice President of Advancement at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, and you're watching Franciscan University Presents. Stay with us. Welcome to Franciscan University Presents. I'm your host, Michael Hernon, Vice President of Advancement at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio. Today we'll be talking about Hispanic Catholics and the new evangelization. I'm joined here in our studios in Steubenville, Ohio with our regular panelist, Dr. Regis Martin, Professor of Systematic Theology here at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, and Dr. Scott Hahn, the Father Michael Scanlon Chair in Biblical Theology and the New Evangelization here at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, and our very special guest, Archbishop Gomez, the Archbishop of Los Angeles, the first Archbishop who is Hispanic in Los Angeles. You've also served in numerous capacities on Hispanic boards and commissions. Pope Benedict XVI has appointed you to the Commission on Latin America, and you were also named a member of the Special Council for the Americas for the Synod of Bishops. So welcome to the program and welcome to Steubenville, Ohio again.
Sure. Thank you. It's great to be here.
It is wonderful. Well, we'll be spending some time talking about Hispanics and Hispanic Catholics in general, but I wanted to first get your reactions to when Pope Francis was named, particularly in light of the fact that he was from Argentina.
Sure. Well, I was very happy.
Yeah.
It is the first pope from the American continent.
That's right.
So I think it is very important for all of us Catholics in this continent, and especially for the people from Latin America, because he's originally from Argentina.
Right.
And I think it is time for all of us to really feel the responsibility of the Church.
Yes.
It was great because when I got the news, first of all, we saw the white smoke, so I said, I got to say Mass at the cathedral.
That's right.
Because in Los Angeles, it was the white smoke. We learned about it like at 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay. So we had a 12 noon Mass at the cathedral, so I said, I got to go there and offer Mass for the Holy Father. Yeah. But I didn't know who he was.
Well, you know, obviously you didn't have a hand in the choice because you're not yet a cardinal. But it must have been a crowning achievement for you because you've devoted so much of your ministry to promoting Hispanic Catholics. You must have been astonished that one of your own had risen right to the top.
Right. Yeah. As I said, I didn't know who he was, so just before the homily, they gave me the name, and I said, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
Because it was a surprise that it was somebody from Latin America.
Right.
And I asked them to double check because the media was there, so I didn't want to, make a mistake and say the wrong name.
Yeah. Now, so you've gotten to know him since his inauguration too. I mean, it must be an exciting prospect to coordinate all these efforts for the new evangelization, and especially for Hispanic Catholics.
Yeah. Yes. Well, actually, I met him superficially in one of those meetings of the Pontifical Council for Latin America.
Sure.
But then I had the blessing just last month, in the month of April, to go to Rome for a pilgrimage.
Yes.
And I was invited to concelebrate with the Holy Father.
Oh, how wonderful.
So it was a beautiful, beautiful
Of course, he's
blessing.
not entirely Hispanic, right? His parents are Italian, plus he's a Jesuit. Did that give you pause?
No.
No comment?
No, I was very happy because I knew him, and it is true that he's an immigrant, which is another blessing.
Yeah.
Just to show that the importance of of how to value the immigrants in our country and all over the world.
That's right. That's right.
Well, are you an immigrant, Archbishop? I mean, you're from two different worlds, right?
Right.
Your mother was born in Texas and your father in Monterrey, Mexico.
That's correct.
You're sort of
well, we are not
split
sure. I'm not
personality.
sure when my mother was born, because her mother, my grandmother, was from San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah.
Her whole family was in San Antonio, but I think my mother was born in Mexico.
I see.
But we don't have a birth certificate.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
But you're citizens
either
of
side
both.
of the borders.
Yeah. You do have your feet firmly planted on both sides of it. You grew
Absolutely.
up in Mexico.
I did.
Yeah.
So you are, both a citizen, but also an immigrant in some ways
That's correct.
too.
Yes, I am.
And I know it's probably too early, but what do you think? We kind of mentioned it, but what do you think this means with a Latin American Pope for Hispanics? What does that lead us potentially forward with?
Well, I think obviously everybody is very happy.
Yeah.
Because we see that our way of worshiping and living our faith now is kind of validated in the church. The church is a universal church, so every single culture, every single way of spirituality and worshiping God is perfectly valid. But I think it is important for us to understand the depth of the evangelization in Latin America.
Yeah. Right.
And that sometimes we are not aware of that here in this country.
That's
in
so
our
true.
country.
Well,
I think that the Hispanic population has been shaped by the Catholic faith more than the North Americans have been shaped by Protestantism, and yet at the same time, I suspect that secularization has probably advanced so much in South America and in Central America that this is going to be a much needed reinforcement to kind of renew that Catholic identity for Hispanic Catholics all over.
Absolutely. My hope is that that what happened in Poland with Blessed John Paul II is what is going to happen in the whole.
To renew.
But I think Scott has a point. The leveling effects of secularization have sort of emulsified of all peoples, so that we're almost indistinguishable. Is that your sense, or does something distinctive survive about being Catholic in an Hispanic idiom?
Well, I think it is clear that the process of secularization and the separation of church and state started in Latin America in the 1800s, with the reforms that happened over there in Mexico and all the countries of Latin America as a consequence of the French Revolution. And that has helped Latinos to maintain their faith even if the society is not a welcoming society. Like in the case of Mexico, I grew up in Mexico, and there was a total separation between the church and the state, to the point that the church was not existent in a civil way. So there was no recognition of the church.
Even though 90% or more of Mexico was Catholic.
Exactly.
But there was an antithesis to the whole government was working against.
That's correct.
Trying to undermine it.
Even in that sense, the Latinos know how to persevere and be Catholic.
More than just
the Cristero movement, I think, would not have been necessary in the States north of Mexico. And I suppose even the militant ideologues who were persecuting the church were, for the most part, baptized Catholics, but apostates.
That's correct. Yes.
And so maybe I've always heard that we're almost half of the Catholic population in the U.S. is Hispanic. Is that right?
Yes. I think some statistics talks about that, especially the younger generation, the Catholics younger than 25 years old, 50% or more are Hispanic origin.
Amazing.
And most of them are members of your archdiocese, right?
That is true.
I mean, isn't LA the largest archdiocese in the country?
It is. We have only 5 million Catholics.
Only 5 million.
Do you intend to meet all of them?
He has. What do you mean in the future?
I hope so.
What would you say? I mean, we've talked a little bit about it. What would you say that the state is, if you will, or the status of Hispanic Catholics in America? How would you describe population?
I think they are eager to live their faith in their ordinary life.
Okay.
I think they feel that they can participate actively with the values that come from our culture. We just need to be more welcoming to them.
Okay.
And I think the bishops of the United States since the 40s have tried to do that. It's just a different process because there are two different cultures. And sometimes little things like in our parishes here in the United States, we have to register.
Yeah.
And Latinos are not used to register in their parishes.
Right.
So they feel a little obstacle to be more active in their parishes.
You know, when tens of thousands of people immigrate to a new country, they've got to be enculturated.
That's correct.
But when millions immigrate, we need to be enculturated.
Yeah.
There really is a sense in which we have to not just welcome, but then also be willing to have this assimilation go in both directions. And to discern the unique spirit of Hispanic Catholicism, because it is so distinctly different in many levels. And so to experience fraternity, to collaborate in the new evangelization, calls for a series of encounters where we really get to know each other, understand each other.
Yeah.
You know, somebody said that in the North American ethic, the center is the individual in a sort of Puritan Presbyterian culture. The centerpiece is the atomized individual. But in Hispanic morals, it's the family. That's the protagonist of the culture.
Absolutely.
And that has a lot to offer, I think, the rest of us.
That's right.
Absolutely, it's the community, the relationships. That's what is more important for people, not the individual.
Right.
In the same sense that
Not just the nuclear family either, but an extended family.
yeah, because we have big extended family.
How many cousins do you have?
I don't know. Too many.
Get your calculator.
But on either side of the border, right?
That's
Family,
correct.
friends.
Yes, I have a lot of wonderful members of my family that live in Texas.
Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like, because my grandparents came from Ireland, and many Catholic countries emigrated here. And it sounds like it's not just the sheer quantity, the millions that have come, but there's a wholly different culture. There's much more value that is beautiful. There's some great challenges. How different is Hispanic Catholic versus the Irish who would have came, or the Italians who would have come? Is it simply just an ethnic difference, or is there something substantially new in that?
No, I think it's similar because the values are the same.
Okay.
Faith, family, solidarity, community. I think the values are the same, but the way to express those things are different. I think even between the Irish and the Italians or the Germans that came in the 1800s and early 1900s, there are differences, cultural differences, but somehow, if as Scott was saying, we open ourselves to those different manifestations, cultural manifestations, then we form the family of God, which is the Catholic Church.
Right. It's been
And
said
I was thinking that my family first came to what is now Texas in 1805. It was still Spain at that time, because the borders were not as rigid as they are now. So the Latinos have been in this country since the very beginning.
Right. Well, you make the point, I think, in an interview that even before George Washington was born, Hispanics were preaching the gospel in Texas and celebrating Mass.
Right.
So you guys founded this country.
Right.
Yeah.
So you probably will take it over.
But going back to your point, I think it's important to really open ourselves to different manifestations of cultural manifestations or religious manifestations, that we can really be part of the universal church.
Yeah.
And I think the differences are not that important. What is important is our faith.
Right.
But I think Americans do have to recognize that, you have family in Mexico and the U.S. You recognize history that goes back hundreds of years beyond the founding of America. For us, borders are sort of like divine institutions. For you and for others who know history and have family on both sides, they're malleable. You know,
Yeah,
these things
porous.
are human
Right.
and they're porous. They're
Yeah.
permeable membranes as a certain in a certain way. And I think Americans have to recognize too that this is a defining moment for us, because it isn't the case that the Protestant subculture defines us anymore. Secularization does. And so at the very moment where after Vatican II we're going through a crisis of identity in America, we're going through a secularization, the influx of Hispanic immigrants, to me, I want to tell them, you're not immigrants, you're missionaries. You know, you bring a faith to us that is going to enable us to be renewed. Really.
Yeah, that is powerful. And there's differences, there's challenges, there's gifts, there's whole unique things that come in. And we really have almost a lot. We've only just begun to discuss what the gift is and also some of the challenges.
Right.
Because there are differences. Stay with us on Franciscan University Presents as we look at some of the gifts and the challenges of Hispanic Catholics, particularly in light of the new evangelization. Stay with us.
What the Latino community has to offer, what I think of is specifically my grandma. My grandma is just a very humble woman from the mountains of Peru. She has such a simplicity of faith. She doesn't have the theology background that we have, but she's just so devout, so firm, and that is what I refer to whenever I look for a solid Catholic.
Hispanic Catholics bring a lot of excitement to parish lives and wherever the parishes are throughout the country. And it's no lie that they bring their tradition, they bring their food, they bring their music, they bring their devotion to our Blessed Mother, and especially they bring their love of family. Family is a huge part of the Hispanic culture, and I know growing up and going to Spanish Mass, you don't just see a mom and a dad and their children, you see grandparents and you see aunts and uncles, and you really see this love for family that I think other non-Hispanic Catholics within the parish see, and it really inspires them, and it really helps, build up the body of Christ.
I'm Dan McNally. I'm a theology major here at Franciscan University. I love studying theology, it's my passion, but I love learning too. You walk out of the classrooms, you want to know more, you don't want the lecture to end, so that's the really great thing about being a part of a student body is you can continue to discuss outside. It's not just studying to make a grade, it's learning to improve yourself, and not just through your own personal prayer or your own personal study, but through community, because that's what we're made for. Franciscan University is academically excellent and passionately Catholic.
Welcome back to Franciscan University Presents. We've been talking about Hispanic Catholics in the new evangelization with Archbishop Gomez of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Archbishop, if you could just open up for us, what are some of the challenges we're facing, primarily with the Hispanic Catholics? What are the main challenges they're facing here in the U.S.?
Sure. I guess the biggest challenge is the reality of secularization that exists in our country, and how for the new immigrants, when they come to this country, they're very strong in their faith, but then little by little, as they incorporate and integrate in the life of the country, then that sense of secularity gets into them, and then because they have everything,
Right.
there is not an immediate need of God.
Right. Right.
So that happened in one way or another to the different groups of immigrants, the Irish, the Italians, the Germans.
They all assimilated into the culture that was.
That's what I like to talk more about, inculturation more than assimilation.
Right.
Because assimilation kind of implies that you lose your own identity in order to become identified with the dominant culture. And inculturation, in my mind, respects your culture, and at the same time, you are able to incorporate in the new culture that you are entering.
So you're both better, but it's
Right.
not simply dropping all of your heritage, not dropping all of your faith, but really having a kind of a dialogue, if
That's
you will.
correct. That's correct. But the challenge is not to lose your faith.
Yeah.
Right.
Because once that you come here, you have your basic needs taken care of, and then God becomes secondary. And also here, because we are so centered in the individual, you got to be successful. Right. And in order to be successful, everything else is not really important. Your family, your friends, and your faith.
Yeah.
So we need to find a way to.
And so we kind of established that early on in the first segment, just how that is part of their normal culture. That is part of the Mexican and Latin American culture is centered around the family, even the extended family.
Right.
And we know that the American family is broken. There's challenges, there's issues there, and they're slowly adopting that and losing their faith. That's a huge challenge.
One of the temptations which I think Italians and Irish and German Catholics have succumbed to is to aspire to become an American at the expense of what was distinctively Catholic or even distinctively ethnic. I think of the sad tale of so many Italians coming here and instantly forgetting the language of Dante, and then also the faith. I mean, that double whammy is not easily recovered from. And I wonder if Latino Catholics have that same temptation.
They do, and it's happening as we speak. Yeah. The second generation or third generation, they lose the language, and then together with that, they lose everything else. In the desire to become assimilated to the dominant culture. Yeah. That's happening as we speak. I think we have maybe 20, 25, 30 years where we can still make sure that there is an inculturation, keeping your values, and at the same time being actively, becoming an active participant in this country.
It has to take place, I suspect, in a way that is not patronizing. In other words, we don't want to treat them as second-class citizens, say, hey, make sure you go back and gather your faith and bring it to the parish. There really is a sense in which we have to empower them, recognize that they have something that is very valuable, and welcome that and encourage it, and then figure out the best way to coordinate those gifts with the gifts of this culture too, so that enculturation really is bilateral.
That's right.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah, and I think the main change happens when they go to college.
I see. Yeah.
Right. That's when they before that they are kind of protected by their families and their environment, but then they go to the university, to college, and then they see the challenges that they have and the way of thinking of the American society, the traditional American society, that you have to be successful. And the first and most important thing is that you are successful in whatever you do. And everything else becomes second.
Well, it's a dangerous place, not just for Latino Catholics, but for anybody to go to a university. I mean, this shining hill, I think, may be an exception, but...
You said something during the break about the government in Mexico, and this is true elsewhere too, that corruption in the social order, but not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. I think in America, we prided ourselves, we recognize that we always had corrupt politicians, but that the private sector was relatively free of that kind of corruption. Right. The last few decades have sort of cured us of that illusion, and I can't help but wonder how important it's going to be not only for Hispanic Catholics, but for all Catholics to create a culture rooted in extended family life. I think in our mind, we tend to equate culture with the political system, whereas you had to have a culture that thrived quite distinct from a corrupt revolutionary political system. And that's a skill set we're going to be in sore need of mastering soon. Right.
Yeah. And there's a parallel between your experience and the experience of Polish Catholicism under the heavy the fist of the communist empire for so many years, and they somehow survived because the culture was vibrantly Catholic, and it was indestructible, invulnerable to these attacks.
That's what I think, that the combination of the values of the Catholic faith in Latin America or in countries like Poland, coming here where there is a strong sense of law and personal responsibility and a judicial system that works, I think it is kind of the perfect combination. Because if you put together the two things, then you have a society that cares about one another. And the family and the extended family and society, this solidarity.
Right. There's both justice and charity.
Right. Yeah. The challenge is to be able to teach it to the young generation, and that they can take it and they do not be confused by secularism, by materialism, and relativism, and all of those issues that Pope
I want to
Benedict
go to
also-
one other point that troubles me is the inroads that some Protestants are having within the Hispanic Catholic population. We talked about the secularism.
Yes.
It seems to me, and you can correct me, that they're having some substantial inroads. And how do we respond to that, or what's happening, I guess, within that?
Right. Well, I personally don't see it.
Okay.
There is no doubt that there are some aspects of our Protestant brothers and sisters that are attractive to the Latinos because they feel more welcome. They don't have to register. They form small communities. Those things are that's a community.
That's
so that's very attractive to the Latinos.
That's right.
But at least in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles and the Archdiocese of San Antonio, where I was before, we don't know what to do with so many people coming to church.
So yeah, that's a good problem.
But
to have.
you're pointing out something that I think has to be addressed in the larger frame, and that is, when you're looking at Guatemala and Brazil and other countries in Central and South America, I mean, it isn't historic Protestantism that's coming in like a tidal wave. It's Pentecostal and evangelical Christianity that has no ties to the Presbyterians as such or the Methodists.
That's right.
But it's much more of a kind of independent, non-denominational thing. And it doesn't necessarily go away just because you engage in the intellectual or the theological. It really is the sense of community that they foster that's so inviting.
Yeah.
But there are theological consequences, quite clearly, especially when it comes to the Blessed Virgin Mary and the Holy Eucharist. They might use Our Lady of Guadalupe as bait on the hook to get them in, and then suddenly they discover an altogether different
how do you cope with the argument that some evangelicals make, that Hispanics find this charismatic Pentecostal alternative very appealing because it holds out the prospect of an intense personal relationship with Christ without this encumbering priestly mediation?
Well, those things are also, in a sense, part of the Catholic teaching, because there is a need for the Bible, isn't it?
We're not averse to people making contact with Christ.
No, I mean that's our whole.
That's what we're about.
Yeah,
and the Bible especially.
So that's important, and then the small community. The Catholic Church started with a small community, Jesus and the apostles. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think we Catholics need to be more aware of those basic things that are part of the Catholic faith, that we need to be more active in talking about it and forming small communities. I had the blessing of being invited to the Synod of Bishops on the new evangelization this past
in October,
in
the fall.
October, what was it? 2012.
Yeah.
And it was for me surprising how the bishops of South America and most of the bishops of Africa and Asia, they all were talking about small communities. Mm-hmm. That's what was important for them in the new evangelization, because that's essential for having that personal encounter with Jesus Christ. That happens one-on-one, you and Christ, and then it happens in a small community. Wow. So I think those aspects of
can help overcome and reach out.
Exactly,
really.
yeah.
Okay.
But we do have to disabuse people of what we rightly acknowledge as a myth, that this encounter with Christ, this intimacy with Jesus, can happen without sacrament, without church, without priestly mediation.
Absolutely, but for Latinos, for Hispanics, sacraments are essential. It's a part of your spirituality and part of your community life. You celebrate every single baptism, First Holy Communion.
And those are big celebrations.
Big
those are
celebration.
small.
And then, you have to spend money, you do it. Money that you don't have.
And if you could speak a little bit to even just what Our Lady of Guadalupe means and how that fits into kind of Hispanic ministry. I mean, that seems like a key.
Absolutely. There's a great devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe among all the Hispanics and Latinos, because Our Lady of Guadalupe was a very important participant in the first evangelization.
Right.
She's the one that really made the change and help people to understand the importance of faith and the relationship with Jesus Christ. So I think that's essential for the present and future of the church in America.
Well, she's patroness of the Americas, and I think a lot of North American Catholics have lost sight of that, this maternal mediation, which is so indispensable.
Absolutely. We had a celebration in the summer of 2012 for Our Lady of Guadalupe, together with the Knights of Columbus. It was a Guadalupe festival in Los Angeles, and we had 80,000 people coming.
Wow.
At the Coliseum in Los Angeles. So it was a big.
Now that's a real
that
event.
aspect. I mean, on the one hand, small communities. On the other hand, big celebrations.
Right.
That's right.
I remember years ago coming into the church and reading Dr. Warren Carroll on Our Lady of Guadalupe and realizing that precisely when most of my ancestors were leaving the church, 8 to 10 million Protestants, back in the 1520s and 30s, in that same moment of history, Our Lady was bringing 8 to 10 million, not just baptized, but catechized, and the humblest and the poorest, the poor were discovering the riches of the faith through that miracle. And I mean, we need to go back to the wellspring and renew that.
Well, that's what's so striking about the experience of Guadalupe, especially for an American who goes down there. My wife and I were able to visit some years back. What struck me was, here is the Church of the Poor, and Mary is their mother, and in the lap of her maternal solicitude, she welcomes all of these people. These are her children.
Right.
Another salient fact was that there aren't very many Americans who go to Guadalupe, and yet she is our patroness as well.
Yeah, and it's a powerful thing when you realize, I believe she's either the patroness of the new evangelization or the star of the new
evangelization.
And just because she took on the culture, she took
That's correct.
Christ and incarnated him to the Mexican people. And I think that's what the new evangelization really is calling us.
Yes, and a beautiful and extraordinary identity between Our Lady of Guadalupe and the needs and the way of doing things and being of the American culture, the whole American continent. So I think she is the start of the new evangelization, and for all of us, she is our intercessor, and she's going to take us to Jesus. So
Amen.
I think it's
Amen.
beautiful.
Stay with us on Franciscan University Presents.
One tradition that we had in our family was, and in most Hispanic families, is the Votive Candle that usually has the image of Our Lady or another saint on the front. And what it is that when somebody has a prayer or supplication that they need to take either to our Lord or to Our Lady, they light the candle, and it burns all day throughout the house, so that, just like in the churches, the prayer is continually in front of Our Lady.
Every aspect of work that I do in the day is offered up to God, and I know that I'm an imitation of my father, my father's father, and that gives me a rich lineage right there.
Explore the treasures of your Catholic heritage on a Franciscan University pilgrimage. Led by inspiring spiritual directors, you'll walk in the footsteps of saints and martyrs in the Holy Land, Poland, France, and Italy, and you'll deepen your love for Jesus Christ through daily Mass, confession, prayer, and the joy of Christian fellowship. Let Franciscan University lead you on a pilgrimage of faith. Find out more at franciscan.edu/pilgrimages.
Welcome back to Franciscan University Presents. We've been talking about Catholic Hispanics and the new evangelization with Archbishop Gomez. I want to let you know this entire program springs forth from the very heart of Franciscan University. The studio we're taping in is right here in Franciscan University's campus. The camera and the equipment are being operated by our students, our panelists, our theology professors here at the university. It's an exciting program that we have had for many, many years here at Franciscan University. Archbishop, we've been talking about Hispanic Catholics, some of the challenges, some of the new gifts that they bring. In 2007, you founded the Catholic Association of Latino Leaders. And what do you tell Latino leaders about their role in the church and the world?
Sure. First of all, let me just talk a little bit about the history of the association. I started the association together with Archbishop Chaput.
Yes.
When we were in Denver, he was the Archbishop and I was the Auxiliary Bishop of Denver. And we realized that there was a need to reach out to successful Latinos, professionals in education, in the business world, in different aspects of society. So because the numbers of Latinos that we have in our country, and also the challenges that they have as they become successful, going to college and having so many challenges, and being in a culture that is asking them to, as I said before, to concentrate on the individual. Right. What we try to tell them is that first of all, that they are important for the church, and that they should not forget or neglect their Catholic faith. And I think they are just waiting for that, because we are getting more and more members all over the country. The idea is to have chapters in every city, every important big city in our country, especially. But little by little, to reach out to all of them, that they can know their faith better, and then they will be able to make an influence in our society with the values of our faith.
Wow. And
they are really excited about it, because they never thought that that's possible, to be able to be a successful business person and a successful member of teaching in a university or in different places, or in the government, or whatever they are. And now they are discovering that my faith, which is the foundation of my life, can be practiced and lived in the society in which I'm acting every day. In their families and their work, in the neighborhoods. So I think that's what is calling their attention, and as I said, the association is growing little by little.
Well, that is wonderful, because they need the help, the support, the challenge, the inspiration, the mentoring that probably happens through all those associations. That's great. And do you see them responding to the call of the new evangelization? Do you and how does that, what does that look like in the Latino community?
Well, the big challenge is education in the faith. The problem that we have in the church, the universal church, is that people do not know well the teachings of the church, and they have the sense that they know enough to get by. But I think we all know that it is important to always grow in the knowledge of our faith. Right. So as soon as they are learning about the social teachings of the church, about the doctrinal issues, about why we do the things that we do. Right. No, it's not just what you did when you were little because your parents took you to church, but because it's your human nature and your relationship with God. Right. And when they learn about the beauty of the teachings of the church, then they get really excited and practice the church in their daily life.
That's powerful.
Their faith.
When you think about defending traditional family, back in early 2013, there was this March for Marriage, and there was a lot of Hispanics that came, standing up for marriage and family. How do you think Hispanics can help lead in supporting and defending the family?
That's a big challenge, because the problem that we have in our country with Latinos is that for them the first and most important issue is immigration. Because we all have relatives that are in a difficult immigration situation. So for us, that's the first and most important thing. Then at the same time, we understand the values of life, marriage, taking care of the elderly, those basic things that are part of our public square debate. But it's difficult to integrate them into that when the first and most important issue is not solved. Mm-hmm. So I think they have those values, and they need to see that they can participate. That's another challenge that Latinos have, because we were talking about the separation of church and state. Yeah. So in Latin American countries and even in the Asian countries, they don't understand that they can actively participate in the life in the public square because they think, well, that's not up to me. It is. So I think education in the faith and education and integration in our society is essential. And they are willing to participate. We just need to incorporate them in what...
that educational formation, I think, is a critical component because, again, I don't know the social history well enough to say, but my general sense is that if you look at Mexico or other countries, since the 1800s, the government has not supported an educational system that imparts the faith with any integrity or strength. And so, when they're coming into our culture and making it theirs, the process is going to have to include this educational component. And not just in catechesis, although that might be the single most indispensable element to be formed in scripture tradition, in terms of the catechism. But just thinking Catholic with their social responsibility, their spiritual leadership, once the immigration issues are settled, what difference will that make? Will they have, and I can't help but wonder that with our freedom in the U.S., whether this might be one of those really important areas where we've got to seize the moment and take advantage of the opportunities to provide education that, say, the Revolutionary Party might not have supported, 70 or 80 years ago. And I don't wait around for it.
But it is, I think, an absolutely historic moment, even a kind of kairos. I mean, you could argue that what we've got is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and he's not leaving, a kind of juggernaut, and it's inevitable. We have to somehow come to terms with this. And it does seem to me that as Catholics, it's easier to extend this hospitality to evince a certain largeness of spirit, a generosity of soul, and welcome the stranger as a brother. Because then we encounter Jesus in his most doleful disguise. I mean, wasn't he a migrant? He was forced out of his own native land, he and his family, in exile in Egypt because of some corrupt government. And I think the parallels are instructive and striking. They need to be exploited, I think, in a way that can help both sides of the border. We need these people. They're alive, they're vibrant, and they bring a future. Yeah. And a lot of us are old and effete. Eviscerated, and I think new blood can replenish this republic.
But we were talking about Pope Francis at the beginning of the show, and I think that's why his election is a great blessing, because the influence on the Latinos, and also because, as we have seen, he's calling us, he's challenging us to go out of the box in a sense, to evangelize people. And don't get comfortable in our own way of doing things. And for the church in this country, in our country, I think it is important to feel that and understand, hey, I go to church, I pray, I take care of my own spirituality, but at the same time, I have the Christian duty to go out and reach out to the people that are coming.
Smell like your sheep, as get out and be with the people. Well, if we could skip to evangelizing Hispanics, what would be the right way to reach out? There's Hispanic ministry. Should it target and focus on evangelizing Hispanics, or is it something that is better to be done as, hey, we're evangelizing all peoples and we open to, which is the better approach when reaching out to Hispanics?
I think it's just evangelizing everybody.
Okay.
And forming communities that are of different cultures.
Yes.
That's what we have in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. In the Archdiocese, we have Mass in 42 languages.
Wow.
42.
Wow.
42 languages.
I didn't know there were that many.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
You are the largest archdiocese.
That's Pentecost.
That is Pentecost.
Right. Yeah.
So, but there are no any more national churches as we used to call them.
Yes.
Everybody is together.
Yes.
So there are parishes that have Mass in different languages, but everybody's together. I think it's important for all of us to be the universal church.
And that goes back to your enculturation, where this isn't an assimilation, but this is an enculturation, so we're all together as one family of faith. It's not separated by language.
That doesn't take away that the Masses might be bilingual or trilingual or something that everybody feels welcome.
I mean, the synthetic point is the same, despite the so-called babble of languages. What you're trying to catalyze is an authentic encounter with Jesus Christ in the context of the church, particularly in the Mass, the Eucharist, which was the point you made in that wonderful piece that appeared in America Magazine. We evangelize the Eucharist.
You know, Pope Francis is the one who embodies this kairos, this unique moment in salvation history, because, while I had a singular love for Pope Emeritus Benedict, going back a quarter of a century, even before I became a Catholic, I just devoured his writings. But you don't need erudition to be the successor to Peter. And though he was uniquely erudite, this man embodies not only the universal faith for all Catholics, but the Hispanic faith as well. And I can't help but thank God for all of the fruits from World Youth Day in Brazil, next door neighbor to Argentina, and all of those, those exciting graces. But I also think that in the years to come, we're going to continue to see not just enculturation and evangelizing going on in theory and conversation, but embodied. And I think just as we had a John Paul generation of seminarians and priests, it wouldn't surprise me if in the next 10 or 15 years, we see, maybe not scholars first and foremost, but seminarians and pastors who are going to be Pope Francis seminarians and priests as well, who want to smell like the sheep, but at the same time feed them and care for them and defend them.
Yeah. We need the evangelists for the new evangelization who are witnessing with their lives. It's hard to refute the story you share. We were talking about that earlier. When you have the witness to be able to share that, and so it's just so wonderful to hear. You don't want to separate the people, although you recognize there's different cultures and there's different respect that might come with having a Spanish Mass or a bilingual Mass or things. But you want to treat all baptized or all people want to be evangelized.
I was much impressed by a recent homily by Pope Francis, which argued along eminently Pauline lines that we have a choice. Either we build walls that keep people at bay, especially the stranger who would like to become a neighbor, a brother, or we build bridges. And Paul, I think we celebrate as a bridge builder, the real Pontifex Maximus. I mean, the bridge is I think, a testimony to a certain confidence, a certitude of faith. I know Jesus, and he's come to me, and he wants me to somehow export him to others, to open up, to be expansive, and not to hide this faith under a bushel basket. I mean, walls sort of conceal that faith, and they suggest a certain neurosis, a certain fear, a defensiveness, but a bridge is wide open, and you invite traffic to move in both directions.
Absolutely. We live in a global society.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other option.
That's right. That's right. That's right. In our last few seconds, is there any things that we should do in a parish level in reaching out to Hispanics?
I think it's important to create that sense of community, that there is no real faith difference, that we all have the same beliefs. Just reaching out in a practical way, inviting Latinos to be part of the parish council, to say something. That's important, and the participation in the different events that are organized by different groups in the parish, in Knights of Columbus.
Just to invite them in to be a part of the community. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think it's important that there is a relationship. The more that we know each other, the more that we can love each other.
Right, yeah.
That's great. You won't want to miss the last segment of Franciscan University Presents. Stay with us.
Ten misericordia de nosotros. And it's saying, Lord, have mercy on us. And I love this line because it's placing yourself before the Lord and asking for his mercy and having that humility. And I think the Hispanic people are very humble people.
My name is Joseph Krelich. I'm a chemistry major, biology minor here at Franciscan University. I love the atmosphere, just completely centered around the Catholic faith. When I play soccer, when I'm in classes, everything has that same Catholic attitude. Myself and a few other chemistry majors had the opportunity to work with top scientists in order to combat neglected diseases. I was able to connect my love for chemistry and also my love for mission work by synthesizing chemical compounds. Franciscan University is academically excellent and passionately Catholic.
Welcome to the final segment of Franciscan University Presents. We've been talking about Hispanic Catholics and the new evangelization. Regis, could you start us off with some highlights and summary?
Well, I'll try to keep it brief because I know there's a lot that needs to be said. But first, thank you very much, Archbishop, for coming. It's a huge blessing to have you, and a singular delight, and we're much edified by your presence. I hope Los Angeles can survive your absence for a few days. But one point I think needs to be stressed, that there are differences between Latin and Yankee Catholics, but the differences are accidental. They don't go to the heart of the matter. Somebody said that a Latin Catholic is more likely to dance during the liturgy than fall asleep. And that seems to me a blessing. That's to be encouraged. Yankees don't dance, but Latins do, and I think that's part of their mode of being Latino, and that should be encouraged. But the essentials are the same. They're unalterable. And when you were asked what makes Hispanic ministry distinctive, you said something that could instantly be universalized to any other ministry. Try to bring them to Jesus Christ. Make it possible to allow the encounter with grace to happen. And that's really the work of the Holy Spirit. Your task is fairly modest. You just midwife that moment when the Holy Spirit steps in and galvanizes these people. And that's applicable to anybody. We're all children of the same Father. And the church, I think, we need to somehow communicate her indispensable importance in the whole economy of salvation. I mean, she's the window through which we are invited to see the world, to see the countenance of Christ, but also a kind of high road that takes us safely to the kingdom. And that point, I think, hasn't been stressed enough, and I'm so grateful that we've got you in LA to make the case, to make the argument so winningly, and in a Hispanic idiom. Yeah. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Regis. Scott?
Well, I'm grateful for you coming and for your ministry, and also for the way that the balance has been struck between the challenge that Hispanic Catholics have in the new evangelization, but also the opportunity that this represents for us. I was reflecting upon this really a lot over the last few years, deliberately kind of building bridges of friendship with students and with colleagues. I have a friend in Guadalajara, Rafael, and we've been talking on the phone almost every week, working on how we can collaborate in the new evangelization. And one conversation we had recently was, how the gringos and the Latinos need to come together, because, so often up north we have an intellectualized faith. Education, Georgetown, Mark, all of the, and then besides the head, there's the heart. And I find that people who are profound often lack passion, whereas the people who are passionate often don't move into the profound depths of what generates the passion. But when you can coordinate these two, the mysteries of faith are profound, but there is nothing more capable of generating passion than the beauty of the truth of what it means to be children of God. And not only children of God the Father, but children of Mother Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I think if we can do it right, this feedback loop, this is what Rafa and I are talking about. I'm going down to Guadalupe next year and meeting him in Guadalajara, and we're going to try to figure out ways to kind of do it so that it's mutually reinforcing, that the truth is so exciting that you just want to open up the heart, the light of truth and the fire of love. I think this is going to have to be an important part of the opportunity that enables us to really face the challenge.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming and your contribution again.
Archbishop?
First of all, thank you for the invitation to participate in your program. I think it is great that we are talking about the presence and importance of Latinos in the church. I think what I want to say is that it is an exciting time for the church in our country. It's a new time. It's the time of the new evangelization. It's the time of the first American Pope. So I think it is a great moment for all of us. And I'm very enthusiastic about the future, because I see that the relationship between the different cultures is going to make the church stronger. As I said, in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, we have a large number of Hispanics, Filipinos, Vietnamese, Koreans, Native Americans. Every single culture is present there. And you see the vibrancy of the church. Every single parish is packed with people, and people are very active in living their faith. So I think it is a great moment of the new evangelization, and I think we continue working together and understanding each other, and most importantly, knowing our faith better, with a real education in our faith, and knowing and loving Jesus Christ more. Then it's going to be a moment of grace for all of us in our country and in the church in this country. And we know the influence of the church in the United States all over the world. So I think it is important. It's an exciting time in the life of the church.
I couldn't agree with you more. It is really exciting. It was such a delight to have you here. Thank you again for coming. If you enjoyed today's conversation about Hispanic Catholics and the new evangelization, we have a free handout here for you. It'll be available at faithandreason.com for a download or just for calling. It's the Archbishop's kind of analysis of Hispanic Catholics. It's a great interview that you really can gain some even greater insight than what we were able to share fully today. When we think about Hispanic Catholics, some of us have different images in our minds. Some of you may have different presumptions or false assumptions. And what I think we just need to do is step out of ourselves and invite all of our friends, all of our neighbors, all of our parishioners into our lives and make those invitations, as the Archbishop said, whether it be to parish council, to different evangelization opportunities, not see any walls of separation, but an opportunity to bring people together so that we can launch the new evangelization together. Our Holy Father, Blessed John Paul II, launched the call for the new evangelization in the Latin Americas. It's as if we're beginning again with something new, but it's building on the great traditions we already have. And we have a one and the same, both our Lord and Our Lady. Our Lady of Guadalupe is such a source of grace for us and for all of the Latinos throughout our country. Franciscan University Presents is part of the mission of Franciscan University. What we do here is forming the students who are transforming the world. And I want to invite you to be a part of our mission here at the university, possibly by getting your degree here on campus or through our distance learning program. Join us at one of our summer conferences or one of our pilgrimages to holy shrines and sites like Guadalupe. There are so many things that you could be a part of. You can join us at faithandreason.com, where there are videos and talks from our guests here and other lectures. This is something that's too important for you not to be engaged in the new evangelization. So be equipped, be inspired, and go forth. Archbishop, thank you for being on the program. Could you close us with a blessing?
Sure. May Almighty God bless each one of you and your families through the intercession of our Blessed Mother, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and may He also bless your apostolic mission, that we become active participants in the new evangelization. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
To download the free handout on today's topic, go to faithandreason.com. Email your request for the handout to presents@franciscan.edu. At faithandreason.com, you can also purchase past episodes of Franciscan University Presents, or request today's free handout and purchase past programs by calling 888-333-0381. That's 888-333-0381, or call 740-283-6357.